No More Heroes, an incredible game. No More Heroes 2, Desperate Struggle, an incredible sequel. Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. What is this game? A quirky kind of spin-off with its own strange identity, but is it any good? Let's take a look and find out. So as you guys know, I don't tend to do a lot of official game reviews for this channel, but this was one I definitely was excited to have a chance to play. I've been dying for this game for so long, most of you guys know who've been following me for a while, because of course I am one of those die-hard No More Heroes and Travis Touchdown fans. And when I say fan, I really mean a fan, you guys. The first game might be one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, and I think the sequel, Desperate Struggle, was also a fantastic follow-up that, while mechanically was a lot better than the original game, I think fell flat in terms of the overall scope. I really appreciated the open sandbox world of the original game, and honestly, it's hard to beat something so unique when it's new. And I think that was the cool surprise about the first game, introducing us to the world of Santa Destroy, the weird gameplay, as well as Travis Touchdown the character. And I think it's because of that, how much I really love this series and Travis. That means I might be taking a little bit of my own personal fanboy bias into this review, and I have no problem admitting that. This is really a review from a diehard No More Heroes fan about this weird spin-off game that is Travis Strikes Again. So what can be said about Travis Strikes Again? Man, a lot. I'm telling you guys, a lot can be said about this game. And it is pretty polarizing, you know? It was first revealed late November in a Nintendo Nindies Direct, and all of a sudden, a third No More Heroes game was upon us, and we had a lot of questions. Is this No More Heroes 3? Is it a spin-off? What is it? And it was later confirmed by Suda51 to be exactly that, a spin-off. No More Heroes 3 is waiting in the wings, in some ways, maybe depending on how Travis Strikes Again performs. The game itself does seem to share a lot of the uniqueness and the crazy, quirky Suda51 identity of the first two games, and it's definitely one of its strongest points. If you're familiar with the world, the gameplay style, the crazy character, and just like the kookiness that Suda51 puts into most of his games, and definitely the first two games, you're probably going to feel right at home, at least aesthetically, and I think that that's a huge plus. But it is definitely very, very different from the first two games in terms of gameplay style and overall presentation. Now, that is not 100% a bad thing, and I think it's an important thing for especially diehard No More Heroes fans to take into this game as far as their expectations. I think the biggest difference, and for some people the biggest complaint, is the fact that the overall gameplay and combat is pretty simple. I heard a lot of people talking about this during the preview period, and having seen some reviews and watched a lot of videos, it became pretty apparent that, yeah, it does seem pretty straightforward. It's almost like a top-down dungeon crawler where you're just mashing a button or two. Travis is swinging his beam katana around, killing a bunch of enemies, and that kind of seems to be the gist of it. And I will tell you guys, having now spent many hours with this game, that honestly, that's pretty true. The game is comprised mostly of those top-down, non-camera control sections of the game where you're literally just dungeon crawling and you're using a weak attack and a strong attack and some simple ways to chain them together. You do get introduced to some super moves and power moves and stuff like that, which is a nice change of pace for the gameplay, but for the most part, you're just mashing buttons and beating up hordes of enemies, which initially might not sound that different from the original games in the way they played, but honestly, it is very different. And I think that that's something a lot of people need to be prepared for if they're expecting this to feel like a No More Heroes 3, if they want to maybe trick themselves into thinking they're playing the sequel to No More Heroes 1 and 2, because at the end of the day, gameplay-wise, they're just not. Now here's the thing I can say. Is it disappointing that the gameplay is a little bit, if not a lot more paper-thin compared to the first two games, and that the overall gameplay premise is simple and easy? Yeah, it's a disappointment for sure. I definitely wish that it had a little bit more and felt a little bit more connected gameplay-wise to the first two games, but it's really not all bad. I don't think that that has to be a terrible thing when you consider that this is a budget-priced spin-off game. And I'm somebody who, as a fan of No More Heroes and Travis Touchdown, really just appreciates that we have a new game to play that is in the No More Heroes universe and features one of my favorite video game characters. Travis Touchdown is a fantastic character, and I think that when you look at the gameplay and how simple it is, the most important thing they needed to do was actually make it work and be fun. And I have to say, spending several hours with the game, that, yeah, I mean, it is simple, but it is also definitely fun. You're using weak attacks and strong attacks, very common in a lot of gameplay beat-em-up action games nowadays. You've got to jump, you've got to dodge, and like I was saying, you do get introduced to some special moves, and in fact, there's actually quite a few. You pick up these chip upgrades that give new moves that can be mapped to the 4 face buttons, and there's a lot of variety there, and it allows you to be a little bit more powerful when you might otherwise be overpowered, and I think that that actually works. Overall, the engine, the performance, the feel of the gameplay, and the combat, while simple, is fun, and it is a smooth-running, smooth-playing game. It's definitely not choppy or broken, and that's why I think it works. Some people might find the platforming sections to be a little bit less fun, but overall, I think they work fine. I think that it plays as well as a lot of other platforming games. It's obviously not top-tier platforming, but honestly, the platforming isn't a huge part of the gameplay anyway. So to me, the overall slashing gameplay just works. It should also be noted, though, that to my surprise, there is a bit of variety to this game. And I think that when you consider the overall premises, Travis and a character Badman, who is a representative from the previous original No More Heroes game, these characters get sucked into a video game machine, and they have to travel around and collect the different games for this machine by grabbing what are called death balls. In this game, death balls are the equivalent to like cartridges, essentially, for this console. And you get a new death ball, which is a new game, and then all of a sudden you're sucked into that game. And honestly, the games honestly do play fairly differently. Like, there are some unique puzzle elements and different ways to progress through the games. It's not really as simple as just top-down, dungeon-crawling, beat-em-up action. And that variety is honestly pretty welcome. You even get a couple of puzzles, and I think that that actually has made the game a lot more fun. The other thing that's interesting, both in a good and not so good sense, is you can switch at any time between Travis and the character Badman. And while it's cool that Badman has a connection to the original No More Heroes game and to Travis Touchdown, I do have to say that there's no real difference. They pretty much play the same. It's just Travis with his bean katana or Badman with his baseball bat. But it's neat that you can switch between the two. You can use different presets of special moves between the two. They level up individually as you gain experience points and level up your character's power. Personally, I'm a Travis Touchdown nut, so he's who I've played the game primarily, but playing Badman honestly feels just the exact same as playing as Travis. Also, to my surprise, I will tell you guys that the levels, as in the actual games for your video game console, are longer than I expected. We're still looking at overall a budget priced video game spin-off to a larger series, so it's not an extremely expansive, long-winded sort of game, but there actually is a lot to play in every individual level. There's a lot of different sections. Each one has a bit of variety to it, and like I said, that's where you'll start to run into some areas that play differently and play like sort of like a puzzle. And luckily, it doesn't feel like a minigame collection, which I think a lot of us were worried about early on when this game was revealed and detailed. And luckily, I can report to you guys that this game really is not a minigame collection. They are real, solid action, platforming, slashing, beat-em-up levels and gameplay through and through, with some puzzles and some slight variety thrown in. They attempted to create a lot of variety with the final bosses to the levels, which again are actual video games within the game world. And that's cool, but they really don't match what the first two games had as far as those assassins. I mean, really, there's just nothing that can compare to those, honestly. I could gush forever about how incredible the bosses and assassins and the variety was in the first two games. This game doesn't quite achieve that, but they do throw new gameplay mixes in every time you're fighting one of the bosses, and personally, I found that to be pretty cool. I do, however, have to talk about one of my biggest gripes and something that, in my opinion, really holds this game back. And to be fair, this is the kind of thing that would probably really only affect fellow diehard No More Heroes fans, and those of us who are really familiar with Travis Touchdown. And honestly, it's that Travis does not feel like Travis throughout most of this game. So much of this game and the dialogue and the story and the character interactions is told through text and weird sound effect noises that happen when the text is being displayed on screen. And I gotta tell you guys, that sucks a lot of the fun, and it sucks a lot of the style and identity from No More Heroes and from Travis right out of this game. And to me, as somebody who loves Travis and knows that he was the heart and soul of those first two games, it does hurt this game, and it hurts the experience, and I think it was a very poor choice. It must have something to do with the budget price and the spin-off sort of feel that they went for here. They were even very proud to announce the voice actors for this game and for Travis Touchdown, and yet still, there's not a lot of dialogue. Really, Travis Touchdown is just grunting here and there, and he goes to buy his ramen to power up, and he says, "Ooh, this is good," and he'll say his moe when he picks something up, and he'll grunt when he's taking damage or fighting in the middle of the game. But really, he's not saying anything. He's not delivering dialogue throughout the majority of this game with his voice. And it's a huge negative for me because that makes the game. Travis makes the game. I realized after a couple of hours and 2 levels into this game that yes, I know that I'm running around as Travis Touchdown slashing my beam katana, but because I can't hear him saying things and I don't really hear him talk about his journey, his plight, crack jokes, be a stupid nerd and a dork and have people just talk crap about him because that's how he was treated in the first 2 games, not having and hearing that and experience Travis audibly through his voice just doesn't feel the same. And I started to realize, man, it feels less like a No More Heroes game because I'm not actually sharing this journey with Travis and hearing him talk to me, talk to himself, and talk to other characters. It's a big, big negative for me. And as much as I can say that the visuals and the soundscape and the music for the game do lend to that No More Heroes feel, it does have that quirky style and that signature Suda51 feel and flavor, not having the Travis touchdown element in a game where I can clearly see Travis running around, I'm playing as him and running around, the fact that it doesn't feel like Travis really makes this feel like almost just any other weird, stylish action game, which again, doesn't make it inherently bad, it just doesn't make it great for the No More Heroes fans, for those of us who were excited for a No More Heroes game. I really wish that they did that. I mean, maybe they just didn't want to spend the time and money to do a bunch of voice recording for Travis and some of the other characters, and I guess I get that. The game is only for sale for $40, and that's definitely a win, you know, on the monetary side, but it takes away a little bit of what makes the No More Heroes brand really unique and special for me, and so that's definitely a downside. And at the end of the day, as much as I can say, yeah, the combat is simple and fun, at the end of the day, the simpleness is also something that isn't ideal. While I can accept it and say that I had a decent enough time playing the game because the combat works, it would be nice if there was something more to it. You're at the hub world, which is at Travis's trailer. You messed with a couple of things that feels a little bit like his apartment from the first game, and that's neat and all. But then you go on this long-winded text adventure by taking his bike out somewhere. You come back with the new game. You play that game. There's some fun stuff to do in there. And then you kind of rinse and repeat through the first couple of levels. And I kind of wish that there was a little bit more to it. But, like I said, at the end of the day, it does still all work and ultimately come together for an okay package. So, in summary, at the end of the day, having spent many hours with this game, I've not yet beaten it, but I have played through several of the games available within it. It's definitely a game where way more works than doesn't work. There are pros and cons, there are goods and bads, and maybe it's not really the No More Heroes game a lot of us want. That has to be an honest and true thing I have to tell you guys. But because more of it works than doesn't, I still overall enjoy the game. I'm glad this game was made. I'm glad that a third No More Heroes title exists and that Suda51 is still involved and interested in making games in this brand and with Travis, and that can't be understated. The gameplay is still fun. I think the visuals personally are really awesome. They lend themselves to the No More Heroes kind of flavor. And, you know, simple gameplay and lack of Travis voice acting aside, it's fun, man. And you still know you're Travis. You see that beam katana, or the bat if you're playing as Badman, and you're just beating up a bunch of weird, quirky Suda51 inspired enemies. And, like, it works. The story and the dialogue feel No More Heroes. It's the lack of voice acting and lack of Travis interaction that really hurts and detracts. So, with more working than not working, overall, I had a positive experience. I'm glad this game exists. It is fun. It definitely helps that it's a budget price. If this was a full-priced game, we'd be in a lot of trouble. But it is a budget price, so that helps. So, if I would have to say, with the amount of time that I've put into this game and my feelings as a No More Heroes super fan, that I can confidently say if I was going to give this game a review score, I would give it a 7.7 out of 10. Travis Strikes Again No More Heroes is a weird game to play and a weird game for me to analyze, man. It's a whole different world, I think, coming from it with the viewpoint of having loved the first 2 games, because I think that a lot of people are interested in this game who might not have played those first 2 games, and a lot of people who may actually pick this up and try it haven't played those games, and so maybe their expectations are different. And I think it's important to note that if you don't have any, like, previous No More Heroes knowledge or bias going into this game, I actually think it's possible you may like it more. I think that it's the people who really know and love No More Heroes and Travis that might struggle the most. I was definitely worried about this game. Some of the early reviews, they weren't terrible, but they also weren't great, so I was kind of worried it was going to be a little bit of a disaster and a disappointment. But I can't help but say, because I'm a fan and I still love Suda, No More Heroes, and Travis, I could see through the lack of the good stuff and still feel a fun No More Heroes inspired kind of experience. And the simple fact, I know I've said this a couple of times, the simple fact that the gameplay works. It is fun. Simple and easy, yes, but it is fun. It's not broken. It's not janky. And I love the visual style and I love the music. It's just an experience that works. And I would recommend that diehard No More Heroes fans go in with a little bit of trepidation and lowered expectations and don't expect anything that you can trick yourself into believing is No More Heroes 3. For people who've never played one of these games and just kind of want to, you know, invest in this series and see what it's all about and see what this game is like, I think you're going to find a fun dungeon crawling action game that has some pretty cool co-op. I mean, it's really hard to argue with that. So it's a pretty looking game. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. So at the end of the day, hey, I don't review a whole lot of games, like I said, but I was very excited to have been given a review copy from Nintendo to play this game because I love it so much. I still purchased my copy. I'm going to be receiving it tomorrow, and I can't wait to have the physical edition. You know, I think that we deserve a little bit better down the road. I really hope that we get a No More Heroes 3, and that's where Suda really has to deliver and can't cut the kind of corners that they did when making the spin-off game. But hey, a spin-off is a spin-off, man. You can only expect so much out of that kind of experience. So that's what I have to say about Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, the third entry in one of my all-time favorite franchises. I want to hear what you guys think if you've been playing this game. Once you've had it in your hands, are you enjoying it or are you finding it disappointing? I think people are going to be very split on this game, and it's going to be probably something to talk about for a while. So that's what I have to say about that. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Robert Ro2R Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.